Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Art of SBA Lending. Today on the podcast, we have Phil Johnson, founder and CEO of Master of Business Leadership Program. Now, Phil is not an SBA lender. He's an expert on emotional intelligence and how having it makes you more successful in your career. So we're going to switch things up today, and I'm going to ask Phil more about this emotional intelligence stuff and tie it back to our industry, which is the SBA lending industry. So stick around. I hope you enjoy.
The SBA landscape is changing right before our eyes, and technology is a big driver of that. To think, just a decade ago, I was getting physical loan packages mailed to the office. We've come a long way. But a lot of folks are still getting tripped up on emailing documents back and forth. Files are too big, there's security concerns, and my personal favorite, I already sent you that. Now, I don't have those issues because I use Able. Able is a deal acceleration platform focused on driving efficiency and improving the borrower experience. They plug right into your existing LOS and solves the document chaos between your team and your borrowers. Borrowers get a place where they can collaborate on loan documents at any time, and your team can easily name, organize, and push documents with the click of a button. Welcome to the future. I encourage you to go to able.ai for more information and schedule your demo today.
Phil, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Ray. It's good to see you again.
You know, I'm looking forward to the conversation. We have often SBA lenders on the podcast, but this season we are looking to do things a little different, bringing some people from the outside that have different expertises like yours to come in and educate our industry on how we can improve and get better. So with that, you know, one of the topics we're going to be talking about a lot today is emotional intelligence. Specifically in the corporate setting. And I just want to ask you, why is emotional intelligence important for career success? Like, isn't doing your job good enough anymore?
No. Great question. Thanks for asking it. We're facing a tsunami of rapidly accelerating global change with a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. And we're really going to need the development of our emotional intelligence to deal with the fear and anxiety that change and innovation triggers in us, both biologically and sociologically. All of that is a long way of saying that emotional intelligence coming forward is the next stage in our human evolution, and it's going to become as essential as air and water, not only to our business success, our career success, but also our personal success.
Wow. How long have you been working on this type of topic?
I've been working with executives and organizations all over the world for the last 23 years, but I've actually been on this path for 56 years, and I just turned 70.
So what is the state of emotional intelligence in corporate America right now?
Very low, extremely low. That's why the current level of employee engagement worldwide, according to Gallup, is around 13%. Low levels of employee engagement are costing the U.S. economy over $1 trillion a year.
Is that trending any certain way?
It's trending lower. People are becoming less engaged than they already are because of the toxic work environments they find themselves in. So it's that combined with the accelerating rate of change and our resistance to change is going to create increasing levels of drama, chaos, and conflict.
Something we've been talking about a lot on the podcast is this trend towards remote work, because a lot of us have been remote for a while, but now almost everyone is remote. Do you think that's helping or hurting engagement?
It's a little of both, but I think that for most people, getting out of those toxic work environments is better for their productivity and their health. It's given them an opportunity to become more conscious that They don't like working in the environment they're in, and they don't want to go back unless the environment changes. Ideally, you want to be in the energy of the people you're working with. But if that energy is toxic, you don't.
Gotcha. That makes sense. You've been on this path for over 50 years. How has, the sort of state of emotional intelligence, which you said was low right now, like how has it changed over the last 50 years?
It hasn't changed very much at all, but it's going to change a lot very quickly going forward. See, there's only two. In order for us to develop our emotional intelligence, we have to be willing to move out of our comfort zone and through the fear and anxiety that triggers in us. So we have to have a connection to something we want to achieve that's greater than the fear that's going to get triggered in us when we step outside of our comfort zone in pursuit of that desired result. And there's only two sources of motivation that will cause us to be willing to do that, what I call emotional labor. One is pain, the other one is passion. And hardly anybody's connected with their passion. So up until this point, those individuals that have been willing to do the emotional labor that the development of their leadership and emotional intelligence requires have been motivated by pain, an urgent desire for better results than they're currently getting, whatever those results are. But they're going to be joined by many, many more people that are in increasing levels of pain. And that's going to motivate them to be willing to step outside of their comfort zone in order to relieve the pain, in order to change, in order to get better results. Does that make sense?
So when you say pain, are you saying, give me an example of pain? Is that like just an employee that hates their job, for example?
You want to generate more revenue. You want to move forward in your career. You want higher levels of engagement. You want to be less controlled by your ego-based fears. See, there's a what I'm about to say, I've been proving all over the world for the last 23 years. I've worked with people running multi-billion-dollar companies with thousands of employees at Harvard MBAs and PhDs, and I've been a faculty advisor to doctoral students at Northwestern in organizational development and emotional intelligence. All of that is to try and give some degree of credibility to what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say is the root cause of all drama, chaos, and conflict, and solution to all drama, chaos, and conflict everywhere in the world. We're only actually conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. The rest of the time, we're relying on our habits to determine the bulk of our behavior and our results. But when we're born, we're not born with a conscious mind. We don't start to become conscious until we're about a year or so old. But we are born with an unconscious mind, and we immediately start wiring up our brain, creating those neural network pathways that become our habits that we need to survive. But a lot of those habits unconsciously cause us to give away our energy. And we do it in lots of different ways. How we communicate, listen, take responsibility, make decisions, all sorts of ways. But when we give away our energy, it creates an energy deficit in us. So at the same time, we're unconsciously giving away our energy over here. We're also trying to steal energy from other people over here to replace the energy we're unconsciously giving away. And that dynamic is going on inside of everybody, everywhere, all over the world, all the time. So what I do in the Master of Business Leadership program is I show people how they're unconsciously giving away their energy, and I give them better habits to practice to stop doing that. And when they stop giving away their energy, their need to steal the energy of other people goes away because they don't need it. And the outcome of doing this work is that they become more inspirational leaders, they develop their emotional intelligence, they become more conscious of what's going on in them and around them, which helps to distance them from their ego-based fears, which leads to higher levels of trust and engagement, which guarantees career, personal, and corporate success. So I've helped
Interesting.
organizations generate billions of dollars in this process.
So when you say guaranteed success, how like what are the different metrics you're measuring to be able to say such a, big statement like that?
Career advancement, revenue generation, uh, better personal lives,
Hmm.
any metric you want. I'll give you an example of a company that's currently valued at about $3 trillion, and they're doing about $600 billion a year in revenue. And their primary hiring focus is emotional intelligence. That company is Apple. That's why when you walk into an Apple store, the energy you feel is an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're trying to understand your pain and, if possible, offer a solution to your pain. Whether you buy anything or not is secondary to the desire to want to serve you. They want you to have a great experience. And maybe you'll tell your friends and they'll tell their friends. And if you think about it, the way you feel in that environment, the energy you experience in that environment is very different from the energy coming out of the stores surrounding that environment. So learning to stop giving away your energy literally enables you to outcare your competition. It literally enables you to develop deeper, more trusted advisor relationships with the people you seek to serve than your competitors. See, all behavioral decisions, all purchasing decisions are made in the limbic part of our brain. There's three major parts of our brain. The oldest part of our brain, it's been around for about 500 million years, is our lizard brain at the base of our spinal column. And then the second layer of brain to develop was our emotional brain, or what's called our limbic brain. And the newest part of our brain, our thinking brain, is the neocortex. But all purchasing decisions, all behavioral decisions are made in the limbic or emotional part of our brain. So once we've decided whether we like somebody or we want to work with somebody or not emotionally, then we look for features and benefits intellectually to justify the decision we've already made emotionally. So developing your emotional intelligence enables you to develop deeper, more trusted advisor relationships than your competitors.
That's interesting. That's something that I definitely do. I bought you buy a car and then you're like, well, it's an electric car, so I'm gonna save the environment, but I just wanted a Tesla. I think there's about to be a big problem for a lot of banks. We're all spread so thin, only once we know of a problem in the portfolio do we put resources on it. We are reactive, not proactive. But I have good news. Our friends at Lumos have a way to score the loans in your portfolio so you can see which loans have a higher chance of having problems so you can get out in front and help prevent defaults before they occur. Their analysis will provide an overview of your predicted portfolio performance, allowing you to analyze the data on all sorts of levels. You can look at the portfolio as a whole, or by subcategories like industry or geography, or you can go loan by loan and look at the predicted expected loss and probability of default. And you can track these numbers over time so you can start to see trends in your portfolio. Now you have no excuse. You can finally take care of your portfolio the way you should be without having to hire a team of analysts, because Lumos did that for you. Go to lumosdata.com for more information. Let me ask you this, because in our industry, we have what's called business development officers. It's essentially the people out there looking for the deals to go finance, the sales arm of the organization. And we all know people buy off emotion, but yet what comes out of our mouth is not often the right thing to say to get people to do business with you. Like, why do you think there's a disconnect? Like, where's the disconnect there?
Because our educational system has failed us and our employment system has failed us because it's focused primarily on our ability to do intellectual labor and has done nothing to develop our emotional intelligence. So it's like the old saying, well, all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So that way we try to communicate with people is intellectually. But I'll tell you something, because we've evolved over millions of years from herds or tribes, We've had to develop the ability to sense whether somebody's trying to help us or eat us. So we have these specialized brain cells in our prefrontal cortex that brain scientists call mirror neurons. You can Google it. I call it bullshit meters. So that's why when you walk into a room, you can sense the energy in the room. Or when you're having a conversation with somebody, you can sense whether they're trying to help you or hurt you. If somebody trusts you, they'll find a way to do business with you, whether or not you have the best pricing or the best technology. If they don't trust you, they'll find a way not to do business with you, even if you have the best pricing and the best technology. So that for instance, one of the folks I work with in the MBL program has an investment business, and he's had it for 34 years, very successful. And going through this process to develop his emotional intelligence has enabled him in last year in 2023, he had the best year ever he's had in business. He's had over a 25-to-1 return on the investment he made in developing his emotional intelligence. And we're just getting started. Emotional intelligence, the development of our emotional intelligence isn't a solution to the challenges we're facing. It is the only solution to the challenges we're facing. That's why more and more individuals and organizations are doing it.
Yeah. Do you notice any differences between generations? Like if you work with a millennial CEO versus, a baby boomer, is there any differences that you notice with regards to emotional intelligence?
Yes, there's a couple of differences. The younger generations are recognizing that the previous generations are leaving a dead cat on their doorstep, and they're scared to death. And that fear is motivating them to move in a different direction. So that's a good thing. It's motivating them to move outside of their comfort zone. But also, the youth of younger generations, they try to follow a paradigm they believe will lead to success, but really don't get to realize that it doesn't work. It won't work until they're probably in their 40s or even 50s. So this is an area where there's a certain level of wisdom that comes from old age. There's a certain level of wisdom that comes from physically being on the planet for a lot of years. It's kind of like everybody gets to be young, but not everybody gets to be old. So there's a resource that can be tapped into with some people, not all people, but some people, that can help the younger generations navigate their way through the challenges they're facing.
I know you work with a lot of high level executives, but anyone, across the organization can be a leader, whether they're in that position or not. I know you agree with that. And so your teachings apply to, everyone in my entire industry. And
Yep.
so I want to ask you a couple questions. Like what are some of the habits of an employee with good emotional intelligence? I don't know if I'm asking that right way, but I'm trying to
Sure,
get to like
sure.
what are the right habits to have?
Well, the habits to have is to become conscious of how you're giving away your energy and develop new habits to stop doing that. Let me give you an example. One of the executives I'm working with was at an airport, actually lives in Dallas. He's a CIO, lives in Dallas. And he was on a flight from Dallas to Canada, to Saskatoon. And the flight was delayed. And it created a lot of anxiety with the passengers that needed to disembark, and they weren't sure when they were going to be able to get back on. And it also created a lot of anxiety in the flight crew because the flight crew didn't know either, and they kind of withdrawing because of the anxiety that they were getting from the passengers.
Mhm.
So this executive kind of saw this and thought it would be a good example, good opportunity for him to practice his MBL habits. So he went over and talked to the flight leader and the crew and said, "Hey, we really appreciate the work you're doing." And he talked to and so if you just keep us advised, and that helped the flight crew to lower their walls and become more engaged. And he did the same thing with the passengers that were sitting around him. He engaged in conversation, tried to change the energy of the conversation to negative to positive. And so his impact had a significant positive effect on the passengers and the crew. They eventually were able to take off and proceed on the journey. And he and I talked about it. He told me about it a few days later. And I said, that's a great example of you using your emotional intelligence and the positive impact it had on the people around you. But when he left those people eventually reverted back to their existing habits. Everybody has to develop their own emotional intelligence. Everybody has to develop these habits so that they're not dependent on the energy or the environment they're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I can see what you mean by like grade school kind of letting us down on this. I mean, imagine if everyone in the world had like a really good emotional intelligence. Like how would the world be different, right? Like
Let me tell you how it would be different. The unwillingness of our educational system to develop our emotional intelligence has enslaved us to our fear. We get bombarded with fear messaging constantly from everywhere. And that causes us to raise our walls. We become more resistive, judgmental, and attached to outcome, and we give away our energy. And developing our emotional intelligence would create a distance from our ego-based fears, which would free us from those fears. And that would completely change everything. It would change business. It would change government. It would change our personal lives. It would have a positive impact on every aspect of our life and every aspect of our business. But that's not what's happened. So that the unwillingness to invest in the development of our emotional intelligence and do the emotional labor that required has had a massive negative impact on all of us. And quite frankly, we can't continue to exist the way we are existing today. We must develop our emotional intelligence because of the tsunami of change we're facing so that we can feel the fear and anxiety that's going to trigger in us, acknowledge it and move through it rather than having that fear and anxiety control us.
well, it sounds like you've got a big job.
Well, quite frankly, I'm going to continue to try and do this for as long as I can, hopefully for the next 10 years. But we all have a very big job. It's estimated that in this century we could experience the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change or 200 centuries worth of change. To put that in perspective, a 10-year-old today will experience the equivalent of a year's worth of change by the time they're 60 in a day and a half.
Because of technology.
Everything, not just technology, everything, everything is changing at an exponential rate. There isn't a single aspect of our society, our humanity, that isn't changing at an exponential rate. Business, government, everything will need to change. Let me put it in perspective. There was a 40-year study done at UC Berkeley comparing IQ with EQ that concluded that emotional intelligence was 400% more valuable in determining success than intellectual intelligence. Let me compare. So think of our ability to do intellectual labor or IQ as somebody giving you $10,000 a day for 31 days. So at the end of 31 days, you've got $310,000. Think of the development of our emotional intelligence as a penny that doubles in value every day. So day one, you have a penny. Day two, you have two pennies. Day 31, you have $10.7 million. Day 40, you've got over 5 billion. Day 50, you've got over 5 trillion. So not everybody can have 160 IQ. If you have a high IQ, your parents had a high IQ, their parents had a high IQ, and you simply inherited those genes. You did nothing to develop it. You inherited those genes. But everybody can develop their emotional intelligence by doing the emotional labor that requires. And the ROI is massively greater than intellectual intelligence. Combine that with AI. It's estimated that within the next 2 to 3 years, AI will have the equivalent IQ of over 1,000. So that our ability to do intellectual labor isn't the get out of jail card it's been in previous generations. It isn't the key to success that it's been in previous generations. The key to success moving forward and the next stage in our human evolution is the development of our emotional intelligence. And that will guarantee career, corporate, personal success.
Which sounds great. Now, do you think like folks that are in my industry that don't have that figured out yet, right? They're part of the 90%,
which is all of them,
right?
Yes.
Is it that they don't realize this, or that they just aren't good at developing the habits that
They
produce
don't realize it. They don't realize it. I've been on as a guest talking about the value and importance of emotional intelligence over 150 podcasts in the last 2 years. And I have my own podcast with another 200 episodes. As a general statement, people have no idea what emotional intelligence is and how to develop it. Even the ones that think they do, because they've read all the books and watched the videos and had the conversations. See, all of that stuff is intellectual. Reading a book, having a conversation, watching a video, that's intellectual and will do nothing to develop emotional intelligence. The development of emotional intelligence is an experiential process. It is not an intellectual process. So the only way you can develop your emotional, you have to take the initial leap of faith of doing the work of learning to stop giving away your energy. You can only connect the dots in hindsight. Folks going through the MBL program, they're going through it and they're going, holy shit, this stuff's amazing. Sorry. And I said, yes, yeah, it is. But let me ask you something. Is there anything I could have said to you in the beginning before you started down this path that could have prepared you for what you know now? And every single person I ask that to, they always say no. There's nothing you could have told me in advance that could have prepared me for what I know now. See, that's the difference between knowing something intellectually and knowing something experientially. Emotional intelligence is a completely different type of intelligence than intellectual intelligence, but they're meant to work together. But we only have one of them. We need the other.
That I really like that plane example that you gave, because that's like when you have a tough or difficult situation, I feel like that's like one of the best environments for a leader to step up and lead. There's a scenario that I want to run by you that popped in my head when you were telling me about that. I know someone who wants a promotion to management, and this person's being told they're not ready. Now they're a high producer, and they're leveraging their thought process to leverage their success to push for that promotion. And one of the reasons cited for not getting it is lack of emotional intelligence. Do you have any advice for this person?
Yeah, develop their emotional intelligence. So first of all, you can't manage people. You can only lead them. You manage processes and things. And as you were saying earlier, Everybody needs to be working on developing their leadership. Leadership is not a position. It's not a title. It's a choice that we all need to make. Whether we're working in the C-suite or whether we're folding boxes in a warehouse, we all need to become better leaders. If you need a title to get people to follow you, you're not a leader. Real leadership doesn't require a title. When you learn to lower your walls and stop giving away your energy, people are automatically attracted to you. They're inspired by you. That's leadership.
And I feel like it's one of those things where you can't just be told, go improve your emotional intelligence. You have to kind of determine that yourself, right?
You have to be in pain. You said this guy that wants or a gal that wants a promotion, they've got to say, God, well, they've got to, if they really want to be a leader, if they really want to move up within the organization, they have to invest in the development of their emotional intelligence, period. But not only will it help them move forward in their career, it'll improve every aspect of their life, not just their business life, but their personal life. You see, we've only got one set of habits, and we use those habits wherever we are, at work, at home, at the grocery store, at the car wash. We're using those habits. Our current habits are getting us our current results, but they cannot get us better results. If we want better results than we're currently getting, we have to develop better habits. And we can do that at any age. It's called brain plasticity or neurogenesis. So we have the ability to develop better habits by doing the emotional labor that requires.
Yeah, and if somebody demonstrates that they have good emotional intelligence and have good habits, but they're just not consistent with it, like do you ever see that? Like,
Sure.
so
Let me give you an analogy. Do you like baseball?
no.
You know anything about baseball?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. So I want to compare a player with a 250 batting average to a player with a 333 batting average.
Okay, I'm with you.
The difference is one hit every 3 days. In a normal game, a player comes to bat 4 times. In 3 days, he'll come to bat 12 times. The 250 hitter will get 3 hits out of 12 at bats. The 333 hitter will get one more, 4 hits. Getting that one extra hit every once in a while can create an exponential difference in your results.
Mm.
So becoming a little more conscious, developing your emotional intelligence, developing the habits that enable you to be an inspirational leader every now and then will create a massive impact on your results.
We're getting towards the end here, but I want to ask you, like, leadership is so interesting because, we look at good leaders, we look at bad leaders, and I've looked at this, I've tried to study it, I try to, become a good leader. I've tried to become a good leader. I don't even know, when you're a good leader, do people just tell you, hey, you're a good leader? Like how do you know if you're a good leader?
Followers. Your behavior and the results you generate inspire people to follow your example.
So like with this person I mentioned before, like if they don't figure this out, like with the pain they need to feel, like my fear for them is they feel the pain to the point where instead of just looking within to improve, they take the easy way out and just change their environment, and then they find themselves 6, 12, 18 months later in the same situation.
Yep. What's your question?
My question is, can the change of environment help that type of person, or is it strictly just kind of within themselves?
You can't create external change until you create internal change first. And that's really good news. Because if if your results were based on external, you'd be in a lot of trouble. But the good news is you have the ability to change internally, and that will create better results externally. You are in control. Unless you give up that control, you are in control of the choices you make and the results of those choices. And that ability to choose is your greatest gift and power. Nobody can take it away from you unless you give them that authority over you.
That would solve our industry's biggest problem, because we are just totally like the idea of jumping ship every 2 or 3 years in our industry in banking world is so common, and
Well,
it goes on forever.
look at the results, right? I mean, if that worked, right, we'd have a whole different industry. The fact is that it doesn't work. It's kind of like the definition of insanity is to continue to do what you've always done and expect a different outcome. If you want better results, you've got to change what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. You got to look at yourself, in the mirror first.
It starts out, you've got to get connected. Here's the key. The starting point is you have to develop an emotional connection with something you want to achieve that motivates you to move out of your comfort zone in the pursuit of that desired result. That's the key. Without that emotional connection to a desired result, change is impossible. So the emotional connection you have with the achievement of a desired result becomes the fuel for the journey. Without that fuel, you're not going anywhere.
Right. So when at the start of the year, everyone, decides to get in shape and do X, Y, and Z
for 2 months. But you see, the thing is that it really wasn't that important to them, so they didn't give themselves enough time to develop new habits. See, willpower burns off really quickly like sugar. The key to success is developing better habits because willpower won't get you there.
It's almost like when you're in sales and marketing, like I learned to fall in love with the process of doing like consistent sales and marketing outreach. And that ended up getting me results. Is that kind of tracking with what you're saying?
Yeah, more than anything, let me give you some insights into you just from our conversation here. Obviously, you and I don't really know each other very well, but I can tell that you've been doing a lot of emotional labor in your life in moving outside of your comfort zone in order to achieve better results. And that's given you insights into yourself and other people, which has helped you to create greater levels of success, right?
This is getting freaky now, Phil. What did they?
Ray, the reason I know it is
Yeah.
that when I see it in somebody else, there's only one way they can achieve a level of emotional intelligence or consciousness that's reflected in their actions and their results. It's by doing the emotional labor of leaving your comfort zone. And the motivation you had for doing that was pain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we
Yeah.
all have to be willing to do that emotional labor. And if somebody's not willing to do it, it simply means they're not yet in enough pain. There's something I call COI, the cost of inaction. When you're unwilling to take immediate action of moving outside of your comfort zone in the pursuit of better results, you're simply not yet in enough pain.
It's really hard work, and I feel like I'm 10%
It's the
of the way
hardest
there.
work you'll
Like,
ever do,
yeah,
but the results are fantastic, and it will free you. It will free you from your ego-based fear. It will guarantee that the rest of your life will be the best of your life. So it's worth the effort for all of us.
well, Phil, how do if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about your program, how do people contact you?
I'll give you a link to my Zoom calendar. They can also reach me through LinkedIn.
Okay, we'll leave some links in the show notes below.
Cool.
Well, thank you again. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode of The Art of SBA Lending. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, email me at ray@artofsba.com. Until next time, ta-ta.